by the time you get through all of those states, Joe Biden is doing well enough. He's racking up a lot of delegates, a lot of votes in places like South Carolina, that he still has the overall delegate lead in that estimate when we take these vote preferences and we translate them into how the delegates would be awarded in the states.
So that's important still to actually clinching the nomination.
Yeah, by the time when you get to next summer and you're at the convention, the balloons drop. That's how the delegates are actually awarded to candidates.
So
What? You have exact delegate counts, and yet we're almost 5 months before the first primary? What's going on here? Well, I'll tell you what's going on. It's called Screw Bernie Again. This report came from Sunday's Face the Nation, and believe me, the source for all this exact delegate count. You notice Bernie Sanders, he had 286, not 285, not 287, 286 exactly. What this is all about, this is coming, believe me, it's coming from the DNC. Because just think about this. Have you ever heard of delegate counts, exact delegate counts projected so early before the primaries even begin? Never. This is all about screwing Bernie Sanders. This whole report on Face the Nation from Sunday is all about instilling the notion in viewers that Bernie Sanders has less than half of the exact delegate count than either Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, or Elizabeth Warren. So, we're going to find out in a minute, who does the DNC now favor as their anointed one? Remember, early this year, it was Kamala Harris was the anointed one, but what happened is her campaign has crashed and burned because she is an absolutely horrible on the road, a campaigner. She's going nowhere. So let's see if you can guess who the new anointed one is.
joining us now is CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, always good to have you here. Tell me about this reshuffling.
Well, this is a story of Elizabeth Warren rising, not necessarily Joe Biden falling. He is about where he has been. But her support and that boost she's getting is as a result of other candidates, now former supporters, moving to Elizabeth Warren. And we've seen this because in this survey, we've gone back and re-interviewed thousands of voters since the summer. And what we see is, in particular, from Kamala Harris, her supporters are now moving to Elizabeth Warren, and at twice the rate that they've moved to Joe Biden and to other candidates. So she's clearly picking up some of them. She's consolidating a little bit of the liberal side of the Democratic Party, and also her electability ratings are on the rise. She's 16 points higher in being perceived by Democrats as being electable, as being able to beat President Trump, and that's always been a key criteria. And lastly, Margaret, I want to emphasize, this is in those early 18 states that you mentioned where the campaigns are really focusing. They're the first ones to hold contests. And so that movement really reflects, I think, where the campaigns are putting their energy.
So Warren's gain is Harris's loss, but what does this mean for Joe Biden?
Well, there's still some good news here. He's still up in our delegate count. And here's what that means. And I know it sounds like it's a far off thing. There's the Democratic convention next summer. But ultimately, this campaign is a fight for delegates. And delegates are handed out to top finishers in all of these states, really any candidate that gets above 15%. Well, by the time you get through all of those states, Joe Biden is doing well enough. He's racking up a lot of delegates, a lot of votes in places like South Carolina, that he still has the overall delegate lead in that estimate when we take these vote preferences and we translate them into how the delegates would be awarded in the states.
So that's important still to actually clinching the nomination.
Yeah, by the time when you get to next summer and you're at the convention, the balloons drop. That's how the delegates are actually awarded to candidates.
So let's take a look at some of those key states.
Yeah.
And we have them here. We'll bring them up on the screen. Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada. What are they telling you?
Iowa is tight. It's still with Biden ahead, just narrowly over Bernie Sanders. But then some news out of New Hampshire, where we know that Elizabeth Warren has been really ramping up, staffing up, campaigning a lot. She is now very narrowly ahead of Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. That's effectively a three-way race there. South Carolina, I mentioned, Joe Biden still has a substantial lead there. African-American support, really critical. And then in Nevada, often overlooked, but an important early primary, we've got Bernie Sanders narrowly up on Joe Biden.
So with this information, what do people do with it? What do they predict going forward?
I think what you watch is who has room to move and room to grow, by which I mean, are candidates being considered by voters, even if those voters aren't making them their first choice yet. And what we see is that Elizabeth Warren does seem to have even more room to grow because she's being considered now by more than half of Democratic voters, even the ones who aren't making her their first choice. When they describe the candidates, she's seen as electable or increasingly electable, but that's still Joe Biden's strong suit. He's still seen as the most.
Means
being able to beat President Trump in the minds of Democrats, and that's really been a top criteria for them. They want somebody they think can go on next November 2020 and beat President Trump.
Okay, so as you can see, Anthony there narrowed the field down to two candidates, Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren. But come on, we can see exactly who they really favor. I mean, everybody, CBS knows, DNC knows, everybody knows Joe Biden is fading fast. I mean, it's not going to be long. I mean, this is campaigning is grueling, mentally and physically. It's taking its toll on him. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if within a few months they start asking him questions like, Mr. Biden, what do you think about the Hong Kong protests? And he answers, I like ice cream. I like ice cream. Mr. Biden, do you favor open borders along with many of your fellow Democrat candidates? I like ice cream. I like ice cream. Yeah, so it's the new anointed one. It's all too obvious, is Elizabeth Warren. Now, also absurd here is that you could start talking about percentages of primaries like Nevada and South Carolina. Sorry, how it works is everything depends on the early primaries. Who wins in Iowa, New Hampshire? That all has tremendous effects later on the other states. That's why. Why do you think candidates stuff their faces with fried pork chops at the Iowa State Fair? Because they know that gives them the momentum, so it has an exact effect. So this is all about the DNC's up to their old tricks again. And we can see also, have you noticed Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton getting chummy again? This is, if anybody can't figure out who the DNC favors now and the establishment media, they need to get out of the prognostication business. This is all about rigging the primaries, rigging the election again against Bernie Sanders. So my advice to Bernie is, wake up, Bernie, they're screwing you again. So anyway, this PJ saying, I like ice cream. See you later.